Let me tell you about a problem that happens to service-based businesses all around the country, and that is inconsistent delivery. Let's use an HVAC company as an example. Say you service a customer 2 times in the last 3 months. It was for the exact same work that you had to go back for. But the customer got 2 different types of experiences. One technician walked them through everything, made them feel pretty comfortable, and they knew and were informed about everything along the way. Whereas the other technician went and did the job, but just left after doing it, and the customer didn't really feel whole after that experience. Or a technician on the back end filled out all the paperwork, said everything he did, and made it really easy to track. While the other one said, I did this type of work, I did these things, and it took about this long, and it muddied the waters after they left that client. The customer ends with not really being sure who to be angry at, but they know the expectation wasn't met for them. That is not a people problem, that's a process problem. And process problems are rarely fixed with staff meetings and motivational speeches or getting on to somebody. They're fixed through having written procedures, descriptions of what exactly do you want your employees to do every single time they interact with a client. I am going to show you how to create one of those using AI. It's going to cost you nothing. It's going to add value, and it's going to be something you can use next week to help level up your experience you give your customers. Here's what most people do when they interact with AI in their business to build something for them, specifically something as distinct as an SOP. I show this because on the surface, it might look pretty good. It's giving you a lot of content, but if you were to hand it to a technician, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly. So hopping into ChatGPT, we ask it a simple prompt. Write me an SOP for onboarding something like an HVAC technician. It starts to create an SOP specific to this HVAC technician, and it's giving you quite a bit of content that's formatted pretty well, but really what does it pertain to your business? As you go through and you notice things like the scope, the responsibilities that it is tying back to that role, things you have to do in the pre-deployment, first day orientation are good generalized building blocks that you can go off of. But once you start to look a little deeper at them, this is where I see a lot of business owners throw up their hands and say, this doesn't pertain to me. I'm actually not able to use this to the degree I want to because it doesn't speak to my business. And that's because the inputs you're giving it are just a little off. They're not allowing the AI to use its full capabilities that can construct something that actually is meaningful to you at the end of the day. So let's hop into another AI system I personally use that allows us to go through and make these, giving the right prompts and information. A strong SOP prompt needs 3 layers of context: role, scenario, and structure. And I'm going to tell you about all 3. Role is where you define what you want the AI to interact with you as. What is it writing this as? Is it a operations manager? Is it a consultant coming in to help you? Because it has the whole world of the internet at its fingertips. It wants to know what it needs to interact with you like, because that determines what kind of information it feeds you. Scenario is where you inject your specific context. Is it business type, the exact process you go through, or maybe some edge cases? This is the area where you transform the document from being a generic piece of information that comes out to a more refined, individualized one. Structure tells exactly what you want the AI to look like. Do you want your documentation to be numbered, bulleted, formatted in a certain way that you know helps your business read, or does it need to be branded or set up for branding in the way that you like it to be? Now let's start interacting with AI and putting in our full prompt that aligns to all 3 of those contexts we just outlined. As we drop in our prompt, we ask AI to write a standard operating procedure to be an operations manager for a residential HVAC company with 3 technicians. Aligned to the scenario piece, we ask it to be related to a residential service call from arrival and departure. And then so we can add our own unique spin on it, our structure is that we want it to include number of steps of sequences, a decision branch for common on-site problems, a materials and tools checklist, customer communication standard, and a completion step covering the documentation once we finish it out, along with formatting this with a title, owner field, version date so we know exactly when this SOP was created, in a section for each major phase. We want this to write as if you're a new technician on day 1 that has clear and direct standards and no assumed knowledge, asking it to stay in its own parameters but give us as much as it can in those 3 layers of context. Now, as it runs, it starts to create an output that looks relatively similar to the original one we did within ChatGPT. However, once you stare a little closer, you're realizing it's constructing this from the mind of that operations manager, and it's really refining it down based on the format you have and the parameters that you set inside of it, being very clear on the systems and assessment, decision branches. If a system does not turn on, check these things. If airflow is weak, check these, assuming that no knowledge and you are really walking through the standards that you keep so you can make sure to knock out any frequently caused issues before escalating somewhere different, and potentially you get the call, as well as repairing and system testing, cleaning up once you finish it, and then the customer communication and how you interact with them, all the way down to the materials, tools, job completion. And now we're starting to see an SOP that might be more aligned to us handing it to a technician in their next week and making sure that they have now raised their standard to what you have set forth and what customers have grown to expect. The prompt it just gave us was a great improvement from the original one. We gave it with very little context. Now, what we're doing is refining it. We want to get more out of it. We want it to be more particular to our business, but how do we expect it to do that? Through context and conversation. So I look at something like this customer communication area. I see that it's relatively generic and I want it to expand. So I write a prompt that says, expand the customer communication section to include a script for arrival greeting, a one-sentence explanation on what will happen during the visit, how to handle a customer who wants to observe, and the language to use when delivering findings for both straightforward repairs and for situations where the problems are a little bit bigger. This further informs the technician whenever they're interacting with their client, the expectation of communication that is set forward from your company and the standard that your customers will grow to expect. As we submit for our expansion on the customer communication section, it starts to build out what we're asking for. Things like the arrival greeting script, one sentence visit explanations. If a customer wants to observe, how do you handle that? The delivery of those straightforward findings, as well as those ones that might have a little more care because they're larger problems that might cost a little bit more money, as well as departure language to make sure ultimately that your client feels whole at the end of it. You want to make sure they're informed. They're spending money with you. They're spending time with you. You have to make sure that they ultimately feel as if they're getting every penny's worth and they feel better off when they leave. Thinking through the different areas of this standard operating procedure, I ask myself, what are the things in my head that this AI just can't assume, that it might not know that I care greatly about? For instance, our decision matrix. It might not be up to snuff of what I expect it to be. I have a question in particular that happens often. What happens when a part is not in the truck in the first place? Does the technician go tell the customer, hey, I'm sorry, we have to reschedule? Do they go grab the part? Or how do they manage that general interaction? So I want to build that into the decision matrix to allow that to be an established standard within my company. Therefore, I ask it to add a decision branch for when is a required part not in the service vehicle. Include what the technician tells the customer, how to document the incomplete visit, the next step for scheduling a return, and then who to notify internally so that we can move forward. Submitting that prompt, it starts to build through that decision branch exactly based on the question we just asked it, building into what happens if a part is not on the truck. What's the decision branch that's made? What do we tell the customer? How do we document an incomplete visit? How do we make sure that we know it's incomplete and we have to go back to do it and then schedule that in our given day? Scheduling that return within your company as a whole to make sure we can go back and do that. And then who do we have to inform from a company side through internal notifications to rectify this situation as fast as possible? These are the type of judgment calls that separate, is this going to be a piece of paper that gets thrown in the floorboard of the van, or is this something that's going to be wasted on a desk? Ultimately, use AI as the structure. The brains behind the operation is you. The context you can provide is you. You ultimately have to feed it, and now we're starting to create something that's actually usable. We just created a heck of a lot of information. We just asked AI to format a lot of different things, and we just got a lot of different outputs from it. Something that's often overlooked that we really want to make sure we nail home is how this gets wrapped and packaged, because you know this information. You just helped create it with the assistance of AI. Whoever you're going to give it to, this is going to be net new information for. That's why I always like to take the additional step of, once you get done utilizing AI, once you feel like this is a near whole document, you ask at the very end through a prompt for it to take all the information that it just created for this SOP and formatted it into a easily readable document for a service technician during the workday. Because ultimately, this thing is only going to be usable if it's actually used. We want to make sure that this is easily understood, it can be got quickly, and that there's no fluff that would otherwise bog down a technician throughout their day, or somebody that just wants to view it to get more information. This video is all about demystifying AI, because so often you hear the concept that these big organizations are the only ones that can use it, the ones that spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to enhance it within their organization so that they can reap those revenue benefits. They're the only ones that can actually use it, when the truth is, it's really how you engage with it. What do you expect to get out of it from a business perspective? Now, I'm not a believer that it needs to be infused in every part of your business. I think small businesses, the human element is what gives you the advantage. Once you get so big and add in all this AI, you take the very thing that helped you grow away. That's what we want to stay away from. But I am a fan of making sure you insert it at particular areas so that you can use your time for strategic growth. If you like these videos and want to see more like them, subscribe to the Forging Growth YouTube channel. And until then, I'll see you next time.